So, I want to speak from a very personal space. And I know that not all people operate like this, but I also know that I'm not the only one who operates like this either. I have moved through life in this way for a very long time, and I know that a lot of people do too. There is a very interesting word in Hindi called moh. I would translate it in simple words to attachment, but if I had to be more precise, I would translate it as attachment to an illusion or attachment to something that is not real. That is moh, MOH. Or you could say it is an excessive belief in the permanence of something that is not permanent, that is impermanent. And in this context, I am primarily referring to attachment to other human beings or excessive belief in your companionship with other human beings. Of course, you can have an attachment to money, or you can have an attachment to a particular habit. For example, a habit of drinking coffee in the morning every day, smoking, going for a run. The habits can be both good and bad, and to a certain extent, our biology is also wired for habitual behaviors. So, human beings are creatures of habits, and not all habits are bad. And I'm not going to try to imply that I have anything negative associated with attachments in my mind. It can be a driving force behind good things too, but I do want to talk about my experience of what I have noticed in people and in myself with regards to how I have connected with them throughout my life. The easiest point to start would be 99.99% of the times human beings connect to other human beings to fulfill a need. So, essentially, for a selfish requirement. Now, that requirement can be very gross, like very superficial. For example, I need money, or I need some very superficial validation, or I need some physical thing from you, so I connect with you. That is very direct. There is a level above this, and that level is physical proximity or convenience. We live in the same surroundings, so we happen to come across each other by virtue of the situation. And since we don't particularly dislike each other, we end up talking, and that becomes a habit. Then, um, according to me, there is another level, one level higher. There is a stage when you have mental compatibility with another human being. This comes very close to companionship, and I have a lot of respect for this kind of getting along. This is when someone else is able to recognize how you see the world, and you are able to recognize how they see the world. So, both of you make each other feel seen and validated. There is a level deeper than this, according to me, and that level, the fourth level, is when another human being meets a very, 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 very deep seated need inside you that has remained unmet thus far. Sometimes in these cases, the pull of the need is so much that it can override mental compatibility. So sometimes we do see couples who are really not on the same page mentally about a lot of things, but they choose to be together because they are meeting some other fundamental need in each other. Now, a person who has come to you to get a very superficial need met, very superficial validation, money, something material, is going to leave as soon as they have what they need. The second kind of person who is in your life as a product of convenience will leave as soon as you are no longer convenient to them. Anything, it can be physical distance, it can be change of lifestyle, it can be you demanding a little bit more, whatever it is. Convenience is gone and they are gone. Bonds with mental compatibility according to me, are a bit deeper. However, as human beings, we travel through so many mental realms throughout our lives. Our state of mind and our way of looking at the world is in a constant flux, more so if you have changed places, or if you've gone through massive changes in your lives. And as a result of sometimes experience, age, your economic situation changes, and also internally what you do, what you consume, what you do, and what happens to you. It's a combination. So we are passing through different mental realms all the time. I have been depressed and I have been not depressed. I have lived in rural India and then I have lived in New York. I have been a student, then I have been a professional, then I was a student again. I can say from my experience, the way I looked at the world changed at each step. And also, there is chronological age. Your mind develops with age, with experience, with exposure. I changed so much. As your view of looking at the world significantly shifts, it becomes more and more difficult to hold on to people who you once used to enjoy mental compatibility with. And it's not required that one person is bad or another is good. Sometimes, maybe I have a job and my friend has been unemployed. Maybe my friend has gone through an accident and I cannot get what they're going through. Maybe my friend lost someone in their family and I had lost someone in my family when I was a child. So that looking at that friend increases my pain. So I am not able to be of any real support. I just add pain to that situation. So as your mind changes, it becomes more and more difficult to hold on to people who you once shared mental compatibility with. Maybe with some effort, even in these cases, the gap can be bridged, but people may not want to put that effort. People don't like to put a lot of effort, um, because they're all tired. We're all tired. We're all overwhelmed. Not only then, if your way of looking at life shifts significantly, not only do you stop being a source of pleasure to each other, mental pleasure, sometimes you can even be a source of pain. Like your friend gets something that you have wanted for very long. You are trying for children and your friend is pregnant, something like that. And human beings want to run as far away from pain and discomfort as possible. The fourth one, which according to me is something that makes people really want to hold on to each other, even though they may not, they may be hurting each other, they may not get along mentally. But when you find someone who's meeting a very deep need inside of you, a very deep emotional need, people want to hold on to that person. Now, I do believe, even in these situations, and I have seen the gravity of that need does not remain the same throughout your life. Once it's met, after a certain point, it doesn't, the ache is not there. So, if the ache is not there, you don't need the other person's presence as desperately to put balm on it. Or you may always find someone who's either better at meeting those needs or who meets an even deeper need that you are not even aware of. We have a lot of needs that we don't know as people. People are tired, they are overwhelmed, they are distracted, they are as clueless as everyone else. So, a lot of us go through these rhythms of getting close to people to get a certain need met and then pulling away and then getting close and then pulling away. We go through these rhythms without realizing why and without realizing what we are doing. Because when we are doing it, it feels natural. Please remember, I said 99.99%. I am not a cynical person, so I do believe it is possible that once in a while someone looks at you for a part of you deep inside your soul that isn't very easily changed and then connects to that. So that relationship can can stand the test of time, but it's an exception. According to me, it's not the rule. If one understands this about human behavior, which nobody ever tells us, we learn to accept that not only betrayal is a very real possibility in human connections, it is almost impossible that you will sail through life without experiencing betrayal many times of varying severity. You don't have to look at life as something negative. For example, betrayal doesn't always have to mean an equation ends or it isn't always life ending. Maybe your mother did something for your younger sibling that she never did for you. It's not life ending, but it's still a betrayal. When you accept in your mind that betrayal is a very real possibility, you also train yourself to recognize betrayal. And I didn't do that for a very long time. And it doesn't have to exclude empathy, but you will still recognize it when someone betrays you, when it feels like they implied a promise to you about their commitment to you or about their goodwill for you, and that promise was broken. And that is betrayal. It doesn't have to be that from the other person's perspective. To you, that is betrayal. You Once you learn to recognize betrayal, you can find the mental bandwidth to process it without getting your heart so shattered or without living in denial for months and months. No, 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 I understand. She didn't really mean that. He didn't really mean that. You recognize when a person has let you down. Whether it's a betrayal after 4 good months or after 4 good years or after 10 good years, if I can make myself look at humanity as human beings, as essentially fickle people, not because they are weak, not because they are evil, but because they are weak a lot of the times. Sometimes they may be evil, sometimes they just don't know. If I allow myself to look at the fragility of human mind, then I always leave some space to account for the possibility of betrayal. Doesn't mean I look at everything with mistrust. It just means I try to keep my mind open in all scenarios, in all situations, whoever it is. It's a friend of 10 years, it's my spouse. I know them, that's great, but keep your mind open. I don't allow myself to not use my mind at all in that equation. This acceptance that betrayal is a real possibility also makes it a little bit easier to recognize when you are betraying someone, because you are not exempt from human needs and human fragility. That recognition may not stop you, but at the very least, you will not try to walk away pretending to be the bigger person, pretending to be like, oh, God bless you, bye. You will recognize that I am being an asshole and it's okay to be an asshole sometimes because I'm human. Recognizing betrayal is the first step, because if you don't, you will never be able to decide what to do next. Another thing that learning this thing about human nature enabled me, and I think it enables you to get rid of fear that someone walking away from you or betraying you, or in some instances just leaving you for the dead, is a statement on who you are. In my life, I have seen this very much. I used to be so enmeshed within my attachment to whoever I trusted. It could be a friend, a family member, whoever. I could never imagine walking away from them. And if someone chose to walk away from me or betray me, I would imagine I must have done something so terrible, or something about me was so terrible, that this person felt compelled to do something that I would never do to them. I would grieve the betrayal for years and years because that grief was associated with fear, the fear that that betrayal says something about me. And then one day I just decided to not entertain fear. Fear that somebody's betrayal was a statement of who I was. And I started very strongly denying it in my head. I was like, no, you're not allowed. And I didn't do this because I had rationally figured out that it wasn't my fault. No. I did it because I, at some point, realized that life is short. I don't want to live a life where I'm afraid. I don't want to live a life of fear, any kind of fear, especially fear associated with somebody else's actions. Fear is bad. Physically, it's bad. Psychologically, it's bad emotionally. Fear is a very unhealthy thing. Caution is good. So I realized this and I was like, I'm wasting too much of my life being afraid. So as fear would come, oh, this person did this, so maybe it says something about me. I was like, no, I'm not entertaining you. Like a security person, I stood on the door of my mind. The next time someone disappointed or betrayed me, I felt no fear because I had trained myself to flip the fear. No, it's not about me. Anybody else's action is not about me. So I felt no fear that somebody betraying me meant I was worthy of betrayal. The funny thing is, because I didn't allow myself to feel or to entertain the fear very much in my head, it must have come, but I pushed it away. I didn't allow it to kind of play in my head. The grief of the loss also didn't last very long. There was some grief, and then there was mostly relief. Something like, thank you for showing me who you are. You have freed up space in my life. Now, this space may be filled with a great friend, maybe. It may not, but at least I have hope. And when this space was taken by you, I had no hope. And until then, I can be a much better friend to myself. This place of attachment to what in most cases is an illusion, because you believe this person is mine, that person is mine, she is my soul sister, he will always stand by me. In many cases, it is an illusion created by time. Some people are just with you for physical benefits and no respect from me, but also the more respect worthy associations are created by time. You happen to be in the same space, you happen to be in the same phase of life where you are able to make each other feel seen. When time changes, when circumstances change, that illusion kind of dissipates. That attachment to that illusion breeds fear. Fear breeds grief. Grief again breeds fear. And you unconsciously then start investing in more and more people who are more likely to act the same way, who are more likely to betray you, who are more likely to leave without putting any effort. And these are the questions I asked myself, and I arrived upon these questions very late. How many times have you tried to make yourself smaller so that you do not threaten the idea that someone else has of who you are, and so that they don't get uncomfortable and they don't start creating a distance from you? So many times you feel like, let me shrink myself. I don't want to make this person mentally uncomfortable around me, otherwise, they will leave me. So many new things that you may have wanted to try, but you felt you would embarrass yourself in front of your friends if you fail. So many times when you didn't show aggression and take a rightful stand for yourself because you thought people only loved you because they thought you were kind. So many times when you were too scared of sounding like a fool because your friends thought you were the smart one, so you deprived yourself the chance to learn. You do all this because you think that if you just keep betraying and abandoning yourself enough, one day you will be rewarded with honesty, love, and everlasting permanent acceptance from someone else. And when these others discover that you are willing to dance that dance for their love, for their validation, When you are willing to abandon yourself, sometimes they also try to encourage it, knowing that they are not, in fact, going to give you what they are implying in this dance as a promise. Now, this is not a cynical video at all. The point of it is, when you see through the illusion, you are free. When you clearly see people who are going to leave are going to leave. People who are going to betray you are going to betray you. People who are going to disappoint you are going to disappoint you. And it will, in most cases, not have much to do with you, but it will have to do with their own needs. There is a different dance also going on within themselves. Now, if you see this, you recognize that it's very possible and likely that multiple people will disappoint you. You become freer than you have ever been in your life. The way I allow myself today to aspire, to hope for things, to dream about things, to make mistakes, to fail, to look stupid, to look unsure of what I'm doing, I have never given myself that kind of permission, that kind of privilege in my entire life. Because now, at some stage, love isn't a transaction where how much you are rewarded is directly proportional to how much you can betray and lessen yourself. Neither are most human associations built on love, which is very deep. Again, not because people are necessarily evil, but because a lot of people are weak. They don't think very much. They are overwhelmed with burdens of life. Sometimes they have self esteems which are very wounded, and sometimes they don't know how deep their needs are, the ones that they aren't even aware of. And this applies to all of us, by the way. So now, since you know this, you will also not blindly trust someone. You will allow people to reveal more and more of who they are, and that revelation continues through life. My sister said that people are like onions. If you have to place your trust in someone, you will test them, not in a manipulative way, but you will observe them. You will have no attachment with what kind of people they have to turn out to be. And you will realize, most important thing, life actually is not very long. Days melt into each other and years pass by. So you will allow yourself to show up for yourself every day. Most importantly, because you show up for yourself every day so fiercely, you are so aggressive in showing up for yourself every day, you will recognize love as something that makes you bolder, that makes you more courageous, that makes you more expansive, as opposed to something that makes you contort yourself, it makes you shrink, it makes you smaller, it makes you ask, am I good enough? Will they still love me? And anything that isn't that will stop feeling like love. And what a blessing, because for most of us, love is that. It's constant back and forth. Am I good enough for this person? He is so cute. She is so nice. Even if betrayal or disappointment does come later with all your precautions, it will be a much easier blow to take because you had never shrunk yourself for that relationship. So the burden of failure becomes a lot less. That is all for me. Thank you.